All eyes this weekend, starting tomorrow night on Thursday. Are going to be on the gridiron, most likely. But we still got some important college basketball as well. We're a week into conference play. We're recording this on Wednesday night. A lot of these teams that we're going to be talking about have played tonight, are still playing as we're talking. But there's some big basketball games Friday through Sunday as well to go along with a great weekend of football too, Joe. Saturday, the playoffs, NFL playoffs don't start till 4:30. So you got some good games. In the meantime, some games that will probably be on the side TVs at the bars as well. Friday night, a nice one that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about one on Sunday as well. So a bunch of stuff. We'll give you all our picks, give you stuff to look out for in these games, and who to potentially look to bet on. And as we start to learn more and more about these teams, but Joe, a big weekend of sports ahead. We talked about it last night with college football. But some really good college basketball games coming up as well this weekend.
Yeah, Coyle, it's going to be an awesome weekend. I was saying last night. I mean, this stretch that we have, really from the beginning of the first round of the playoff through the end of January, you have playoff football almost every weekend. You have big time college basketball starting now. You have the NFL, playoffs kicking in. I mean, awesome big time sporting events that it's going to be awesome on, tomorrow night. I'm going to be sweating out Notre Dame. And then, we got a whole weekend of awesome playoff games. Great weekend of college basketball as well. That's going to be probably going under the radar, which, is what it is. It's unavoidable with, football on for some of these games going to the radar, but a lot of big games and a lot of ranked teams going on the road. So a lot of big road tests this weekend as well.
Yeah, excited to get into it. As we said, some of the records that we're going to be talking about in these games are going to change because as we're recording, some of these teams are playing right now. Some of them played tonight. A couple played last night on Tuesday as well. But uh, the weekend starts off on Friday night with a Big Ten matchup. Very intriguing just to say that this is a Big Ten matchup. But you got number 22 UCLA at 11-4 traveling cross country to play 11-4 Maryland, who, after a really strong non-conference schedule, has really struggled to start off conference play. This is an 8 o'clock tip on Fox. Maryland projected at Haslam to win this one 74-67. So go Maryland minus 6.5, over under 140.5. I'd be very surprised if that's the actual number when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Maryland here, 79-71. I'm taking the 6.5 here. I'm going to definitely play. I think, because quite honest with you, I think it'll be a lot less. But one thing that I've been learning, and I learned the hard way tonight with UConn, if you have a ranked team going on the road to an unranked team, and the unranked team is favored, that's kind of showing you something. UCLA, got embarrassed last night against Michigan. Um, you know, Questions about their toughness coming into play. Mick Cronin was ripping into them. That was the first thing I saw when I opened up Twitter this morning. So I'm going to go with Maryland here because it is tough to bounce back. And I think that message is going to have a positive effect for UCLA going forward. Like, I'm not concerned about them in terms of like missing the tournament, but it's just going to be tough to bounce back. Now you got to fly all the way across the country and go play Maryland on a Friday night. And, that crowd's going to be jumping. You're going to have this game on Fox. It'll probably be on, like you said, Coyle, a bunch of if you have two TVs or more, or if you're in a bar, it'll be on a bunch of the side TVs alongside the Ohio State-Texas game. I think Maryland is going to get this done. Terps are sleeper, kind of under the radar team as we're really getting into Big Ten play here.
I'm gonna go UCLA. As I said at the beginning, I think it's. I'm gonna be shocked if they're a 6.5 point dog in this one, but if they are, I'm definitely taking it. I think whenever we've seen Mick Cronin come out and have a press conference like he did last night, where basically he called his team out for being soft, not practicing hard, not seeming to care, they bounce back the next games. I remember going back to the Cincinnati days where he's like, I'm going to have the football players there tomorrow for open tryouts, basically, see if they want to come play with us, see if you guys are really tough enough to hang with those guys and if they're going to take your spot. If UCLA is going to go anywhere this season, I think they have to respond in this game. So I'm going to have them going to Maryland and winning on Friday night in kind of not a season saving game, but a season kind of changing game. This is one of those fork in the road type games that if they don't respond to that statement, it could go downhill quick, or they respond and start to play their best basketball. So I'm going to say UCLA has a bounce back performance, goes to Maryland and wins on Friday night. But for the sake of our picks, UCLA plus 6.5, under 140.5. Of UCLA winning that one 70-67. All All right, Saturday now in the Big 12. And Joe, this is one of those games that it's a fishy type of spread. You're kind of talking about it with UConn and Nova. Iowa State still favored here in the metrics, but number 3 Iowa State at 13-1 travels to Texas Tech to play the 11-3 Red Raiders. 2 o'clock tip on ESPN. Haslam's got a 76-74 Iowa State win. So we'll go Iowa State minus 2.5 over under 149.5.
So I am going to go with Iowa State here over Texas Tech. I have the score 73-71. I think it'll be pretty close. So I'll take Texas Tech to cover that 2.5. I'm going to go with the under here, 149. I feel like that's a lot of points. A lot of times when you have these underdogs, and you think it's going to be close, usually those games are lower scoring and they're not track meets. So I'm going to go with the under here. I'm going to go with Iowa State to win outright, though. 13-1 start. I mean, their only loss was to Auburn in Maui, and I mean they've looked unstoppable since. They've looked really good. They throttled Utah the other night. I think they're gonna get it done at Texas Tech.
I'm going to go with Texas Tech at home here. This is just one of those tough conference play type of spots. And I know Iowa State's not a perennial power, a perennial big brand like Kansas walking into that building. But still, this is a game that Texas Tech fans are going to get up for. This is probably the first Saturday as well. Kids back from campus. This is going to be a juiced up atmosphere with a chance to knock off a top 5 team. Texas Tech has had a really strong start to the season as well. And this would be a huge resume kind of boosting win for them, and a win that they're going to need in a really tough Big 12. You got to win your home games, especially when you're a Texas Tech team that's probably going to be, somewhere between a 6 and a 10, most likely come tournament time. You need those home wins, especially those resume boosting wins, because those wins on the road are going to be very tough to come by. Iowa State's going to be just fine. I don't really think this loss is going to say much about them, but I like Texas Tech to pull out the outright upset here. I'll go 70-65. So Texas Tech plus 2.5. Under 149.5 there. All right, we go to the Big East now. Number 9, UConn, 12-3, travels to Georgetown to play the 12-3 Hoyas. 2 o'clock tip on Fox. UConn loses tonight at Villanova in a pretty wild game there. Georgetown last night had a lead on Marquette for most of the game, winds up losing that game, though, at Marquette. But this isn't the Georgetown of old. This is a Georgetown that's been playing really well this year, and I think certainly trending in the right direction. But UConn projected to win this one 72-69. So we'll go UConn minus 2.5 over under 140.5 for our lines there.
So I'm going to go with UConn here, 77-69. I'm going to take the over in that game. I'm going to take UConn minus 2.5. I just think this is a bounce back spot after tonight. I think Hurley's going to be ripping into those guys the next couple of days, getting them ready for Saturday, because this is a big, game. You can't lose back-to-back games if you want to keep pace not only for the Big East, because now Villanova looks resurgent. I won't be shocked if Villanova's back in the top 25 next week. You still have Marquette, and also you're fighting for a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament if you're UConn. You lose a couple more games, you're in danger of falling to a 5, maybe even like a high 6. Because I was seeing all over Twitter, that's kind of where UConn is projected, around a 4 seed right now. I'm not allowing myself to go full in on the bracketology. I save that for when I'm depressed after the Super Bowl. But this is a big game for UConn. I think they bounce back here and cover and win the game.
Yeah, that was an awesome game, Villanova UConn tonight. It was, as a Nova fan, or at least closely following the program, it's been obviously a down few years. For them to be able to get a win over a program that has obviously risen to the top of the Big East at UConn, but maybe even the top program in the entire country. Cool to see them kind of get back and a big time win there tonight. But I just saw on Twitter, Joe, Alex Karaban came into the game taking 151 free throws in his collegiate career. He had never missed back-to-back free throws in his career until tonight. Pretty wild stat there. But I'm going to go with UConn as well. I'm going to take them to cover the 2.5, and I'll go under 140.5. I'll go UConn 74, Georgetown 64. This isn't the same UConn team, obviously, that we've seen in the past few years, and Liam McNeely being out as well, I think, is a big loss for them. He was a really valuable freshman and a guy contributing a lot early on, but they don't have kind of those killers that they've had the past few years. I think Solo Ball's a pretty awesome player. He's one of my favorite watches in college basketball right now. But this team's just kind of missing that killer kind of identity that I think that they've had the past few years. And Georgetown, as I said at the beginning, is looking like a different program than what we've seen the past 3 to 4 to 5 years, where they've been really struggling at the bottom of the Big East. I think they're going to give UConn a good fight in this one, but I don't think UConn loses 2 in a row. I'm going to have them winning this game and covering, as I said. All right, we go to the SEC now. Number 8, Florida, 14-1, traveling to Arkansas, who fell to 11-4 tonight as they lost on their home floor to Ole Miss. Florida coming off a beatdown of number 1 Tennessee last night. 4 o'clock tip on ESPN. Florida projected to win this one 81-73. So go Florida minus 7.5, over under 153.5. And I don't want to say it's a desperation game for Arkansas, but things haven't been looking great in SEC play early under Cal. Do you think that they can pull off the upset at home here, especially with Florida riding high off of that win against Tennessee?
I'm going to say that it is desperation time, because if you lose this game, now you start 0-3, you have back-to-back road games after that against LSU and Missouri. And, LSU might not be on paper as good as some of these other teams, but we've been talking about the SEC basketball-wise. They're very deep. So I really hate this. This is kind of a plug your nose type of play. I'm going to go with Arkansas here, 82-80. I'll take them. If the spread is 7.5, I love that. I love the 7.5 there. I'm going to go over 153.5, just because you're getting a Florida team that is, like you said, Coyle, riding high. You not only beat the number 1 team in the country, you embarrassed them, you dominated them. I think I saw they only made like 10 field goals in the whole game. It was something like that. Tennessee got completely annihilated. Florida killed them. And I think, Arkansas, definitely a plus 7.5 is a great play. But if it's plus 7.5, I will definitely be sprinkling the money line as well. I think Arkansas can get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to take Arkansas as well. It does feel like a bit of a desperation game for them. We kind of touched on it at the beginning, but that was even kind of a little bit of a desperation game tonight against Ole Miss, and they didn't respond. I was really bought into this Arkansas team, but it's kind of like what I don't want to compare it completely to this, but what I was kind of saying at the beginning of the playoffs about Ohio State in football. It's like a really good culmination of talent, but are they really a good team? And obviously, we've seen Ohio State has been able to kind of mold into that and flip the switch, and they're clicking now. Do I think Arkansas ever get to that level? Probably not. But this is a talented squad and one of the, if not the most talented potential roster in the entire SEC. They just haven't really came together yet, and they're struggling to shoot the ball from the outside. If they fall to 0-3 in this really deep SEC, that's maybe going to get like 10 to 11 teams in the tournament. It's going to be an uphill climb, and you don't want to have to be digging out of a hole in a conference that you're going to have no nights off, really. I mean, you talk about teams like LSU, South Carolina, probably Vanderbilt when it's all said and done. Like, those are going to be kind of the teams at the bottom there. Those still aren't layups in this conference. So Arkansas, they need to find a way to come back and win this one. Maybe Florida comes back down to earth a little bit after that resounding victory against Tennessee last night. So I'm going to take Arkansas to win in a desperation spot, 75-72. So Arkansas plus 7.5, under 153.5 there. All right, we go to Athens, Georgia, number 17, Oklahoma, 13-1, playing Texas A&M right now. They have a freshman right now. I believe his last name is Gooden. He was going off like 17 points in the first half. Cooking Texas A&M right now. They travel to Georgia, who's 13-2, coming off a big win over Kentucky at home last night. Georgia looking to make it back-to-back ranked wins at home this weekend. 6 o'clock on ESPN2. Georgia projected to win 74-67. So Georgia minus 6.5, over under 140.5.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I was saying earlier about the Maryland UCLA game. You have an unranked team at home. I'm going to take Georgia here. They're favored against a ranked team in Oklahoma coming on the road. I'm going to go 83-75 Georgia. So I'll take a minus 6.5. I'm going to go over 140.5. Georgia wins this game. You might see them in like the top 15 next week in college basketball. I mean, this is a very good Georgia team this year, something that we're definitely not used to seeing out of the basketball program. So that's really cool to see. I mean, I know I've said this like 100 times, it's not like a broken record. I'm just excited to see how the SEC plays out. You could have a team like 9-9 in conference, maybe like the 10 seed in the SEC, but still be a top 25 team in the country. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, but I'm going to go with Georgia here at home.
I'm going to go Georgia as well. Pretty impressive performance from what I saw last night against Kentucky. Oklahoma, as I said earlier, they're having a good first half tonight against Texas A&M. We'll see if they can close out the win. But his last name is Goodine. He's a freshman. He's got 21 points already in the first half, and they're up 9. But that's a Texas A&M team without Wade Taylor tonight, as we know. He makes that team go. So I'm not really buying into this Oklahoma team that much yet. They're sitting there at 13-1. They went to Bama last week and got absolutely rolled. Could this just be a different team at home potentially there? So I'm going to go with Georgia at home. I'll be very surprised if the number is actually 6.5. I think it'll probably be more so like Georgia minus 2.5. But I do like Georgia to win and to cover this one. I think this Oklahoma team is going to wind up being more fraudulent than a real kind of contender in the SEC. Give me Georgia 80-70. So Georgia minus 6.5 over 140.5 there. All right, number 1, Tennessee at 14-1 after a shellacking last night against Florida. They traveled to Austin to play the Texas Longhorns 11-4. Could be a big weekend for Texas. Friday night, maybe beat Ohio State in football. Saturday, maybe beat the number 1 team in the country in basketball in Tennessee. 6 o'clock tip on ESPN. Tennessee projected to win 70-64. So Tennessee minus 5.5 over under 133.5. Joe, will this be a weekend to remember or forget for Texas fans?
I think it'll be a weekend to remember just because I think that they care more about football more than basketball, and I'm slowly starting to talk myself more and more into Texas on Friday night. But I am going to go Tennessee 78, Texas 73. I'll take Texas to cover. I'm going to go over 133.5. I mean, just a brutal stretch for Texas. You have the top 2 teams back to back. You have to play against them. And Auburn, took care of business. They got Tennessee. They're going to have Tennessee on Saturday. Tennessee is, they're just feeling embarrassed. The coach, probably doesn't even have to motivate him that much. Rick Barnes, that old bastard, still can't get it done in the tournament. But I feel like Tennessee will respond after that embarrassment. I think they're going to come away with a win on the road, go back to Knoxville, and get ready for the rest of the season after a shocking loss. Like, to get beat like that is crazy. Like, that's the only word. Shocking, embarrassing, like insane. So I'm going to go with Tennessee here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I saw someone tweet it was like college basketball is funny because you could turn it on and the number 1 team in the country looks like they never played basketball before. And then someone said the same thing with college football. Or look at Oregon; they went undefeated and they got the doors absolutely blown off them against Ohio State. And that's the beauty of it. Just got to go out there and play every game. It doesn't matter. But I'm out on this Texas team. I think this Texas team is going to be a Texas team that misses the tournament. And I think Tennessee gets back in the spot. I think those guys love playing for Rick Barnes, and obviously this is a game, emotional connection to him, going back to Texas, first time for a conference game. I think they played last year in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, but I do like Tennessee to bounce back in the spot. That was just kind of an outlier game the other night. Started out 14-0. That's very hard to do. Florida is a very good team. We've seen even their one loss this year at Kentucky was a really tough game on this past Saturday. I think Tennessee bounces back, and we see Texas as a little bit more fraudulent as the season goes on. And this is another one of those games coming off the Auburn beatdown by Texas last night, or excuse me, the Texas beatdown that Auburn gave them last night. We see that's going to be more and more likely than Texas winning those games. So we're going to go Tennessee in convincing fashion, 74-61. Tennessee minus 5.5 over 150 or 133.5 there. All right, this is a team that I think when they've been at their peak, them and Auburn are the 2 most dominant teams so far in college basketball. Like when they're playing at their absolute best, they're really tough to stop, and they're super deep. And that's number 5, Alabama at 12-2. Beat up on South Carolina tonight to move to 13-2. Excuse me. They travel to Texas A&M on Saturday, who's ranked number 10, as we talked about, playing Oklahoma right now. Wade Taylor out with the injury. I think he was on the bench, so it's probably not something too serious. Hopefully he can play on Saturday, because this would be a good one to go side by side with the Ravens and Steelers on Saturday night. But it's an 8 o'clock tip on ESPN. A&M projected to win this one at home by a slim margin, 78-77. So we'll go A&M minus 1.5 over under 154.5.
I'm going to go Bama here, 83-78. I'll take Bama, plus 1.5. I'm going to go over 154.5 here. Coyle, I mean, you kind of said everything in the introduction of this game. When Bama's at their peak, they're one of, if not the best team, in the country. And, even if Wade Taylor plays and he's not 100%, that could be something to watch for Texas A&M. So I am going to go with Bama here. in a pretty entertaining game. This will, like you said, be a good little palate cleanser to have on because I feel like the Ravens are going to beat up on the Steelers on Saturday night.
Don't tell that to your father. The
He's
Steelers,
asleep.
Steelers, what?
I said he's asleep already. Don't worry.
Steelers and Ravens last 10 games, all 9 of them have been decided by under 7 points. So something to watch out for. I think the Steelers keep it close on Saturday. But I'm going to go Alabama, even on the road here, even if Wade Taylor's playing. I love watching him. I love watching Texas A&M and their ferocity, or whatever the word would be, their intensity on the offensive glass and just how hard they play night in and night out. But I think this Alabama team is starting to get on a roll. They were dealing with some injuries early in the season. They had to kind of reinvent themselves a little bit, mix some new guys in the lineup, mix in some new rotations. They're on a roll now, going to South Carolina tonight, who I don't think is going to be a good team this year. I think it's going to be one of those teams at the bottom of the SEC. But to go on the road in the SEC and win it in dominant fashion by double digits isn't easy. You're only doing that if you're an elite squad. And I think Alabama has the pieces to go to Texas A&M this weekend, whether Wade Taylor plays or not, and find a way, to win this game. I'll go Bama 90 to 84. So Bama plus 1.5 over 154.5. All right, we got 3 games left. Awesome SEC game and a team that really hasn't been talked about, I think, that much, but has a chance, I think, to compete for the SEC title. That's number 14 Mississippi State at 14-1. They host number 6 Kentucky at 12-3. Kentucky coming off a loss at Georgia last night. 8:30 tip, on SEC Network. Mississippi State projected to win 85-79. So Mississippi State minus 5.5 over under. Pretty high, 163.5 here, Joe. Have you seen Mississippi State at all, and do you think they'll beat down Kentucky?
I haven't had a chance to watch my Bulldogs yet this season, but I am going to go with Mississippi State here, 74-71. Like I was kind of saying, earlier with a bunch of these teams, it's tough to bounce back going on the road, especially to a team like Mississippi State, who, at least in our lifetime, has been kind of starved for any sort of really athletic success, like football and basketball. I know they won the national title of baseball a couple years ago, but really a team that hasn't had a whole lot to cheer for basketball wise. They've had a couple of decent teams in our lifetimes, nothing really crazy unless I'm forgetting something. I know they had the DAC run in 2015 where they were number 1 in the country for a little bit, but this is a massive game. We talk about it all the time with these teams. You got Kentucky coming to your town. It is the biggest game of your season, probably outside the Ole Miss game, but it is a massive game. When you have Kentucky coming to town as a ranked team. And that's why I'm going to go with Mississippi State here to win the game. I'm going to take Kentucky to cover the 5.5, and I'm going to take the under. I do think the under is that's a lot of points there. So I'm going to go with the under 163.5.
Yeah, this was an exciting one. We'll see. Kind of, Saturday's a long day, but we'll see how tuned in everyone is to this one. But this is one of those games like Monday night. Like I might just go back and rewatch because I think it's going to be a really good battle. I'm going to have Kentucky though going on the road. I think that they need a bounce back type game. Kentucky has those vibes of the team that's going to be dominant at home, but really struggle on the road. And I know it's pretty simple to say that, but they just shoot so many threes and shoot the 3 ball so up and down. Like when they're hot, they're as hot as they come. It kind of goes back to what you said about Alabama in the past. That's what the style of play kind of Kentucky plays. But when you're on the road and you're missing threes like that, it's hard to win those games. When you're at home and the momentum is riding with you, it's hard to stop. But I think this is one of those games that coming off that bad loss, that beat down to Georgia last night, I think that they're in for one. And Mississippi State is looking like a really solid squad. But I do think Kentucky top to bottom is still more talented than them. I think this is one of those games where they do get hot from 3, ride the momentum, and they win a really close game. I'm going to go 75-73 Kentucky. Kentucky plus 5.5 on 163.5 there. All right, last game is Saturday, and then one on Sunday, which will tip off before any NFL football. So I'm sure this one is going to be on all the your TVs as you're getting ready to tune into Bills and Broncos. But Saturday night, Washington State 13-3 at number 18 Gonzaga 12-4. I was today years old, or maybe yesterday years old, when I found out Washington State was in the WCC this year. But they're sitting there 13-3, undefeated in the conference, traveling to Gonzaga, 9 o'clock tip on ESPN. Plus, Gonzaga projected to win 85-72. So we'll go Gonzaga minus 12.5, over under 156.5.
Yeah, this year and next year, Oregon State and Washington State are going to be in the WCC for all their other sports outside of football. But it's funny because I did see on Twitter, like their first home game, they also still have the Pac-12 sticker on the court, which is kind of awesome. But, and then in a couple of years, Gonzaga will be joining these guys in the brand new Pac-12. But I'm going to go with Gonzaga here pretty comfortably, 88-69. I'm going to take Gonzaga to cover 12 and a half. I'm going to go with the over 156.5. Washington State off to a great start. They're 13-3, but all three of their losses were to power conference teams, all by double digits or more. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga there to win. What are you laughing at me or something? Did I do my math wrong? Did I fuck up again?
No.
Oh, I saw you start to laugh. I'm like, did I fucking say over when I actually had under with my score? But I'm going to go with Gonzaga here pretty comfortably over Wazoo.
Yeah, I'm going to go Gonzaga as well. I'll have them to cover by the hook. I'll go Gonzaga 84, Wazoo 71. Haven't seen Washington State this year. Like, I was surprised to see them sitting there at 13-3. I know their coach left. I believe he went to Stanford. They had a bunch of guys transfer out. Miles Rice last year. Screw Washington State. They were the team that came back and beat Drake in the tournament. But I'll have Gonzaga win this game. I haven't seen enough of Wazoo to really comment on them, but I have seen Gonzaga in a couple of those showcase type games, and they're your typical Gonzaga team. Shoot the ball really well, share the ball really well, play some fun offense. I think this is a pretty high scoring one, but 156.5 is a big number. I'll have the under just hitting as well. Give me Gonzaga 84, Wazoo 71. And the Sunday game, before you get into a triple header for the NFL wildcard, including our Philadelphia Eagles, Nebraska 12-3 after a pretty crazy road loss at Iowa last night. I believe they wound up losing that game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a pretty crazy overtime game there. They traveled to number 20 Purdue, who is 11-4. Noon tip on Big Ten Network. Purdue 71-65. So go to Purdue minus 5.5, over under 135.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go Purdue, and I'm going to go the over here, 75-67 over Nebraska. And my document just totally loaded up. I'm going to go with Purdue here. Haven't watched a lot of Nebraska this year, so I'm just going to take Purdue at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Purdue as well. I am going to take Nebraska, actually cover the 5.5 here. Nebraska, a little bit different than last year's team, but still a pretty stingy group. They had a really good chance to win at Iowa last night. And this isn't the same Purdue as we know as years past with Zach Edey. I don't think it's that talented of a team. If their name was another kind of middle tier, like if their name was Northwestern instead of Purdue, I don't even know if they would be ranked right now. I think they have that number next to their name just because of their brand and kind of their past success. I think Purdue, we could see them being an early exit in the tournament this year, but still Mackey Arena, a really tough place to go and play. I'll Purdue win, but I do think Nebraska has the pieces to go in there and win, so I'll take them to cover at plus 5.5 there. That'll do it for the college basketball preview show for this weekend. As we said, football, it's a big football weekend, Thursday through Monday. Playoff games in college, playoff games in the NFL. All eyes are going to be on football. But the side TVs, if you're out at the bar or if you're watching in your house, you're going to have some action on some of these top tier, high tier college basketball games. So as always, wanting to try and cover the top ones and break them down as best as we can. But as always, everyone, thank you for tuning in with college football, college basketball. We'll be back with one more college football episode breaking down our national championship game, and then we'll be our head deep into college basketball going forward from there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk next week.